Hello everyone, and welcome back to another Warner unit guide. Today we're gonna talk about aircraft, fixed-wing aircraft in particular, talking about how to use them, and yeah, this one will be a bit different, as aircraft are really all-around planes that have a lot of different use cases, and we're gonna still go over how they function in the game, the pros and cons, and then talk a bit about how to use them based on what kind of mix of aircraft you have available in each division. So not talking about individual use cases, but more about how to use different groups of aircraft depending on what kind of division you have, categorizing them, and like talking about those categories and how you should play based on which category your division is in. And yeah, let's get into it and let's talk about how aircraft function in WARNO, because that's pretty special compared to other units, which when you deploy them, they spawn directly on the map. They come in from your normal spawns. Aircraft don't do that. When you buy them, you can then call them in. The bottom menu will pop up with 9 slots. You can't have more than 9 different aircraft in that at the same time, though if you lose some, you can fill them up again. So that's the basic way of how you get them, and then you have to call them in onto the map. They come from an air spawn, which is not always on top of the normal spawns, though often it's pretty close. And then they use the travel time, which can be different. Bombers usually having more, around 11 seconds usually, and fighters coming in quickly with usually 2 seconds or 3 seconds of call-in time until they reach the battlefield. And then they can only stay on the battlefield for 4 minutes. Currently, all airplanes have the same autonomy of 4 minutes or 240 seconds that they can stay on the battlefield, do their mission, shoot their bombs, and then they have to go back to the base. You can also call them back earlier, and then they will just fly towards the air spawn and after a couple of seconds disappear. And then they will reload, and if they took damage, repair. Reload works with the supply cost. Each supply point is 1 second of reload, though they reload different weapons parallel. So the biggest supply amount that you used up is the indicator on how long they will take to repair. For example, if you drop this bomb here, all 4, then it's 2 minutes, 120 seconds that you will have to wait. MiG-31, if you shoot all 4, you also have 2 minutes to wait until this is fully reloaded. Fuel works the same, so if you keep them 4 minutes around, you also will have to wait 4 minutes for the reload of the fuel. So if you keep them 2 minutes around and shoot all 4 missiles, that is the same. If you keep them 3 minutes around, you will have to wait 3 minutes, no matter how long the bombs have dropped. And some bombers are weird because they have a really long reload time. As every bomb, no matter how big it is, adds the same 30 seconds to the reloader. So something like an F-111 with a lot of bombs can have a really long reload time of, for example, 240 seconds here, or with the small bombs here, 360 seconds as it comes around. And yeah, this is something that you really have to keep in mind, and that makes some big bombers with small bombs relatively hard to use because they will only come around a couple of times within a game, even if you can get them out without damage. And yeah, that's the base information there. Yeah, each hit point damaged also adds, I believe, a minute, though I'm not quite sure about that. Could be 30 seconds to the repair time as well. So let's talk about the pros and cons that come out of this. Pros of aircraft, they can come in pretty quickly compared to other units. That means then if you buy them, you can get them onto the battlefield and close to the enemy quite quickly because they move faster than any other units in the game. And with their high base speed, even the slowest planes still arrive at the front line faster than anything else once you bought them. And can usually have a high kill potential as well whilst they're on the battlefield, because all the payloads, all the stuff that they can drop usually hits quite hard. And another big strength of them is that they can only be hit by other planes with air-to-air missiles or by ground-based a lot of other units can't deal with air. So if you took away those capabilities from the enemy, then your aircraft can come in without issue. And the cons, they can't spot for themselves. At least most of them can't. Seed planes can attack active radar without other spotters, but otherwise you need units to spot for them so that they can engage ground targets. They can't hold the front line because you have to get them back, and they're at least as much time off the battlefield as they are on the battlefield. So that's a disadvantage there as well. And then they are also specialists. So you can't use a seed plane usually to hit anything else outside of AA. Cluster bombers only good against armored units. AA units only good if the enemy brings around any planes, or to keep the enemy from using planes. But like, planes are really, really specialized in their use case in nearly all cases, or if they are all-rounders, they're really expensive. Like something like the Strike Eagle that can hit with LGBs and also is actually pretty decent at killing helicopters and decent at winning airfights. It costs you 350 points for it. So, but usually they are really specialized. So that's the kind of thing that you have to work around with in the air tab. And yeah, that, as I said, creates those couple of categories. And we're gonna start with the first one now. And the first category is pretty simple. It's the air defense category, where your ground strike capabilities in your air tab are rather limited or not needed because the rest of your tabs are so strong that you really want to focus on just keeping the air clean for your own guys against helicopters or aircraft. And divisions that are good at that are, for example, 3rd US. It doesn't have the best strike aircraft. The Phantom strike packages are also all pretty weak. The F-111s currently as well. And you have good fighters in it. The F-4E Phantom is good. The F-15C Eagle with the AMRAAMs is pretty good as well. So all of this is a deck that where you want to play pretty defensively. Its counterpart on the other side, the Warned 19th, is a similar story, or you can also, for example, play 25th that way, but Warned 19th is a good example as well. It has a lot of good fighters. The strike aircraft rather limited, and the air slots usually pretty expensive. So if you only have like 2 or 3, 4 air slots that you can fill, you usually want to fill them with fighters and just focus on, because that usually also means that your deck is good elsewhere, and just focus on not letting the enemy strike your ground units and set up a perimeter. In decks with good ground-based AA, you also can combine this as you only call your planes in when the enemy and keep them in your airspace, and the enemy, if they want to kill your fighters, have to dive over your AA, and you shoot at anything that tries to bomb your front line. Like, that's how you use these, and just keep the air clean, keep the sky clean, few strike aircraft, just pure defensive play. It's pretty simple, and yeah, pretty effective with good planes like Su-27s or F-15s, but even can work out with divisions like even the 16th Belgian can be played if you want to, like that. And you just take 3 cards of their F-16 and then only engage air units when they fly over your Mistrals and Gepards, and keep the sky clean, dive down for helicopters. Like, that's the job here of those tabs. And yeah, that's the first category. Let's move on to category number 2. And category number 2 is the trade against high value targets. And this is something that you do with decks where your baseline is pretty solid, but you, for example, struggle a bit with dealing with the heaviest of tanks. And 6 Motostrelki, for example, is a good target, or decks where you want to play aggressive and the enemy can only stop you if they put some high value targets in your way, and then you want to call in a plane real quick, trade, and get out. And the MiG-21 BIS cluster is basically the perfect example of this. Like, this is a really hard-hitting bomber that can eliminate any tank in the game, but it's also a plane that is relatively easy to kill. Only 8 hit points, 10 ECM, comes in fast, gets to the target, usually gets the bomb drop off even if the enemy fires upon it, and then often dies as well. So this is not a plane that you want to throw in at any 50-point tank out there. This is usually something that you want to reserve for either big clusters of vehicles or specific high target vehicles like an M1A1, like a Leo 2A4, and stuff like that. Call them in, strike them. There are also bomber variants with HE variants of this. The second Panzer Grenadier, for example, has the Harrier HE2 that plays somewhat similar. And though this is a different loadout category-wise that we will get to later, but if you play it with less air, like for example this way, then you just call this in on enemy tanks or enemy high-value targets, and this usually doesn't survive. That's still fine for you. That's how you want to use these and really get them in for value. So yeah, the hunt for high-value targets, especially in decks that are otherwise pretty decent all-rounders or somewhat aggressively oriented, like some builds of Second Panzer Grenadier can be, like this is where these kind of planes come in, and this kind of playstyle where you just want to get stuff done and just eliminate the most important stuff on the enemy side. And category 3 is air dominance, and this can come in a couple of forms, but this is usually where you have like 5, 6, 7 air units in your tab. And this is where specialized units like Seed really come into shine. And otherwise you usually don't want to use Seed. Like in a pretty empty air tab, where you only have 3-4 units, filling a slot out for Seed usually isn't worth it, because Seed only really makes sense if you make air dominance one of your win or at least semi-win conditions, and you have actually the time and resources to invest into Seed, because Seed itself, even if you kill 1 or 2 AA units, which won't be easy if the enemy knows how to turn off their radar AA and you don't have any other valuable targets around, even then isn't really valuable. Like, Seed only becomes valuable when it does the suppression of enemy air defense so that your strike packages can get through, and that only is valuable if your strike packages are big enough, and you maybe even can use the Seed to allow your strike packages to hit the enemy air defense, because if you kill all enemy aircraft and all enemy EA, you have kind of a new win condition. You can just let your fighters and bombers constantly barrage the enemy on the ground. If they can't have anything to fire upon your planes anymore, then your planes will generate a lot of value over the rest of the game. So that's where this comes in. And even a deck like KDA kind of counts, because it can combine itself with Books and Osas to help out dealing with enemy fighters and enemy planes, and then you have the Seed, you have the strike packages. But a classic form of this would be obviously 6 US with a lot of good fighters, good Seed planes, great strike aircraft that can come around like this. And 82nd Airborne, 11th ACAF can be played like this as well, with a lot of air units in the tab. So, or 76 VDV, like those kind of decks are the ones where you really want to play this playstyle, where Seed planes also really become valuable, as Seed is really easy to micro against if you only use the Seed. Like, we sometimes see it in League that people just buy a single Seed plane and call it out, and this is just not something that you ever should do. Like, Seed only should enter the battlefield if you have some other bombers with it, because then the enemy has to decide if they let the bomber run through or if they risk it and risk being hit by the Seed. The micro becomes a lot harder on their end as well, and you actually get some value. Otherwise, they just keep the radar AA turned off and your Seed plane doesn't hit anything, and you invested a lot of points into a Seed plane that doesn't do anything, and the enemy will likely push you on the ground because they have basically gained those points as an advantage in the ground fight. So yeah, this is category 3. Let's come to category number 4. And category number 4 is the most common one. It's where you have a bit of everything, and you have some decent strike aircraft that can kill targets that aren't the most specialized ever though, and aren't always super reliable, but usually deal good damage. Like for example here in 7th, where we have some AA, we have some decent bombers and so on. And this is just where you want to consider these as a kind of like a can opener. Like, they aren't just killing the most special units on the other side, and you don't always want to use them, and you don't always want to hit the same targets. They are more like a unit that you bring in when you see an enemy weak spot, and you know that the enemy might not have enough AA around yet, and you can get some value so that your ground units can do the exploit. Like, for example, hitting in a strong enemy ATGM position with this MiG-21 bis here, so that your T-72s can roll forward. And this is something that you always should consider when using air. Like, we see a lot of mindless, I just buy bombers because I see targets, and then I just send the bombers in. But if you have an air tab like this, and often your air tab will look like this, that's not worth it often enough. Like, maybe you will get one random Conkers killed somewhere on the map, but it's not even a impactful kill. And then you will try to do it on the second Conquerors, and then the enemy will have enough AA that your bomber just dies, and you kill the 60-point unit or 70-point unit and lost the 125-point unit, and you just got set back in the trades. Or even worse, if you like just kill a T80, a T55 with an SU-22, or like a Leo 1, and then your SU-22 gets shut down. If you get a T80, that's obviously not so bad, but you need 2 hits there to get that kill. So rather use the cluster, but then that's just an even trade. So stuff like this, like, you should often, aircraft won't get the value back that they cost you. Like, they often won't make it back home. If they die, they often left you behind in direct points, but they might open up a window of opportunity for your ground units. And that's what I meant with can opener. Like, so that your other units then can funnel in on that spot, and the enemy can't react as fast, because the ground reinforcements they buy will need a lot longer to the front line, even if they buy it directly at the same moment where you buy the aircraft, because the aircraft strikes directly, might die, and might be a bad trade, but might enable way better trades on the ground or way better positions to gain on the ground that then generate the value for you. And this is the most common of the 4 types. Like, you have a bit of AA, you have a couple of strike aircraft in there, and you have to be careful with how to use them. Don't overspend on a tab like this. Like, this looks like, oh yeah, you have 7 good at bombers, right? Like, why don't you buy them all and throw them at the enemy? Because then you will be so far behind on the ground, and you will just lose the game. Buy them carefully, buy them at the right moment. Only invest into mass air when you know you killed a lot of enemy air defense, or you know you have air superiority. Usually only do it in decks that really need it as a win condition. And otherwise, yeah, don't be shy to trade away in decks that need the trade, like in category 2. And yeah, if you feel like your ground is good enough to win any game, just go with category 1 and go for the air defense. So yeah, if you have any further questions, leave them down below. If you want to see more of these kinds of videos, leave a like, and see you all in the next one.